All right, ladies and gentlemen, what did you think? WrestleMania 39 Night 2, and certainly the landscape and the dust has settled. And where do we go from here and trying to process all this? I know there's going to be a segment of fans out there that are going to be really upset, and others going to certainly want to acknowledge certainly the bloodline and certainly our man of Sportswire Radio who covers all the latest happenings here in the world of professional wrestling for us. Also dabbled a little bit briefly in the world of professional wrestling. He is also the host of the Hockey Fan Chat, and his name is Randy Dillon, and we definitely acknowledge Randy. And Randy, how the hell are you after WrestleMania 39 Night 2?
What a night it was, Tom. I didn't live up. Night one was so incredible. Night two, there was some some flaws, but it was another great night of wrestling. I don't think we could disagree that night two was a complete fail. Yeah, some matches were not great. Question, maybe a few bookings we'll definitely get into, but I thought the show was again another great mania. Not highlighted night one was, but definitely another top show we haven't had in a very long time in WrestleMania.
Yeah, I still think, and it was going to be so hard to be able to replicate what you had at night one. It was almost, maybe I guess, with the exception of the six-woman tag match, almost as perfect, I guess, execution wise of every single thing that went on. But you certainly didn't have that tonight. But you had some really, really great matches. I think a couple of things we were spot on with, but I know it's on everybody's minds right now. And we have to go right into it, right to the jugular. Main event, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns. Chris Belcher, our counterpart with us on Friday, said it was the perfect storm for Cody Rhodes. And you kind of felt it with the entrance. You kind of felt it on how many times Cody had got out of it, or he got out of Roman's hold, or he kept kicking out. But yet, I guess in kind of WWE fashion, Solo Sikoa comes back in a hood and attacks Cody Rhodes, Roman from behind with the usual 1, 2, 3. And was that how you would have did it, or just give me your reactions as Roman Reigns, as we've spoke about quite a bit, is going to get to that milestone in terms of days as champion? And where do we go from here then?
So I know there's a lot of nasty backlash going on right now. A lot of people are saying Triple H is kind of throwing his weight on Cody, saying this is what you get, think you're going to take over my throne. Or people are saying Vince is the one calling the shots. I don't think this has anything to do with it. We talked about this, Tom, a couple of times. How close is he to day number 1,000? 55 days away. You are so close to something we will never see again in the eye of the professional wrestling. For us wrestling fans, this is like a team going to the Stanley Cup 3 times, a team in the NFL winning the Super Bowl 3 times, or the Major League Baseball. Now, again, completely different game. I'm not saying this is anything like that, but for a wrestling fan view, this is kind of what we think. Like, oh my goodness, someone doing this for so long. You go back to the day of the Backlund, Hogan, San Martino.
That's the names that were left: Morales, Backlund, San Martino, Hogan, and he's gonna pass Morales, so that leaves you into San Martino, Backlund, and Hulk.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna get to like Bruno San Martino era. Let's not kid ourselves. But does he hit 3 years? I think that's a strong possibility. Does he pass Pedro Morales? Absolutely. Does he hit 1,001? Absolutely. This is just still so much story to tell for Roman Reigns. Now you have the bloodline sense of Roman hangs on to the title, the Usos don't. Cody, can he now get over this big major loss and continue with the story? Because adversity is a great storyteller here. If we're going to look at a Cody Rhodes standpoint, everything's not going to go perfectly for him. He started off his return being Seth Rollins, then he had the injury to the pec, was gone, won the Rumble, everything was going so smoothly. You ran into adversity. Now what? There's still so much story to be told in this rivalry. I don't think we're seeing the end of the Roman Reigns Cody Rhodes story just yet. I think there's more to come, and I still think down the line, possibly, he does finish the story.
We'll see. I got a couple of comments first, and I have a few thoughts. First, we'll go into Samuel Holloway here. I think was doing some training for a while over at GT Ministry. Says same old Reigns, always cheating. Skulls, our very good friend from the EWF, and I guess I could say WCE, says he's pissed off. Roman Reigns is getting too old. Well, I did notice that Rome's You see his beard is
Yeah,
starting to grow
the
white. Did you
grades are
see that?
showing.
All right, well, fair point, but I will say this when it comes to Roman and Cody, and it kind of reminds me, and maybe it's a little bit far fetched, but I think in a way, now I thought Roman was going to retain. I definitely thought for whatever reason this was not the moment, but you're going to get a segment of fans like an Anthony Finkel who was texting me, my brother who was watching it, that they kind of feel like they want to see a change. It almost reminds me a little bit of when the Rock and Triple H were feuding. It reminds me in a crazy, twisted, convoluted way. WrestleMania 16, the moment was to give the title back to The Rock. The Rock wins the Rumble. He's got all the fans, all the momentum, and then Triple H hangs on. And then by the time The Rock got the title, it wasn't the same. So, I mean, in a sense, was this the moment? I mean, because to me, the way I see it, I agree with you. There's still a lot to talk about when it comes to Cody Rhodes, but I don't know if you're going to get another moment like the moment you had. He's got the family there. They built up the entrance, and then what do you
Yeah,
think?
I don't. You do hit a good point there. The moment, the spectacular of WrestleMania. WrestleMania is the be all and end all. We know the big four pay per view: SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble. They are bigger, but they don't compare to WrestleMania. Now, do I think Cody can get a big crowd reaction like he did tonight? I think if the match does happen, let's say at a Money in the Bank in the United Kingdom, we know how passionate those fans are. And backlash in Puerto Rico, you could say could happen there.
I don't
But
know. Backlash in Puerto Rico,
but
I don't see it.
you're
I
even
don't see it.
closer to day 1,000 there, so I don't think it's going to happen there. But I still think you're right. It's not going to be. We're not going to get the Daniel Bryan Yeselmania. We're not going to get the Rey Mysterio, the Dream come true, or the Shawn Michaels, the Boyhood Dream, Austin
Stone
era.
Cold, the new
Yeah,
era, the Attitude Era, even Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, WrestleMania 20. Although I know really can't say Benoit's name these days for obvious reasons, but you didn't get that moment, and I think that fans in SoFi Stadium probably wanted that moment, and they didn't get it.
exactly. And I also think as well they put more heat now towards Roman as a heel, the more of that hate, because I still think majority of the fans still appreciate Roman at this point. They still are like it was a pretty even. You go back to the first number of WrestleMania when Roman was champion. There was more boos, and I can attest to that. WrestleMania 32 in Dallas, Texas, there was more boos than
Oh yeah,
cheers.
I remember that.
The
Yep.
year after against The Undertaker, against Lesnar, it's still pretty even. I think when the boos start coming bigger for Roman, then I think we're going to see more of the turn. But I still think Roman is the needle pusher. He's still the bloodline, still going to be purchased. Now you have more of a story in the bloodline happening. The Uso didn't get the job done. What does this mean for Solo Sikoa? Who is he going to be loyal to? Well, so you
Well, I
think
think he's loyal to Roman because Roman seemed very happy with him. And the Usos, I mean, that's going to be an open-ended question. Where do we go with them? And I have a lot of comments here, so let me try to read them off. Anthony Finkel, who I know is going to be upset, says, Bloodline more like Punchline. What a joke. He didn't like the interference. He says Cody Rhodes is his champion, but Cody Rhodes is not the guy with the champion. Samuel also says he is still training with GTM. I appreciate that for correcting me. Thank you for that. Then he says, acknowledged with exclamation points. Skull said last night SoFi security almost caused a riot last night that fans chanting SoFi sucks. Well, you were there at night one, but weren't there at night two. I'd be curious as to why that was. Anthony Finkel says the entrances were epic. Loved watching Rhodes taking in the moment. 80,000 plus in attendance. Yeah, I mean, there's no question that that was the case. But I got a theme here. Tell me your thoughts on this, Randy. Now, last night, for the most part, it felt to me as if we saw a passing of the torch in a way last night. But tonight, we got the complete opposite. We got the status quo for the most part. We had Bianca retain, which I think we were pretty much in agreement that was a toss up. Gunther retains, and they also acknowledged his title run and how many days he's been champion. And obviously, Roman hangs on here. And I mean, I'd even go further in saying status quo with Brock Lesnar and Edge winning. So is it fair to say, and maybe to paint it with a broad brush here, Randy Dillon, that last night was your passing of the torch night, but tonight was your status quo?
Yeah, I would say definitely tonight was a status quo, especially with the Edge win. I was a little bit more surprised that, but we talked about that and we'll get that in last night and we'll talk more when we
We're
get
gonna
to
talk
it.
about that. Yep, absolutely.
Bianca Belair and Asuka. The thing with Bianca Belair is, and Chris Belcher made this point a few days ago. She's the John Cena in the women's division. Like, yeah, the fan may turn her, but she's so respected. She gets that media attention. She has so much
And how about
goodwill.
her strength in that match, by the way? How about her strength?
Exactly. So I think it's not all gloom and doom with Bianca Belair not winning the title. I think Gunther keeping the IC is a passing of the torch because Sheamus is really close to has had a great career. Drew McIntyre, same thing, and with his contract being up. So I think really this Gunther continuing to hold the IC title, I think maybe elevate that even more, making that another big title. And the Brock and Omos, I think that's all you could really do at that
Yeah,
point.
I think we were all in agreement that that was going to be what that was. And it was funny, I just got home, maybe just in time for that match. And it was like I didn't really miss anything, which is what we kind of spoke about there. But, there was something, and I know that we'll get into this later on, and we'll definitely spend more time on it, but just kind of warming things up here. Gunther, we were speaking obviously off the air as we were watching the match, and we were sharing some clips on Twitter, and a lot of people watched them, which we really appreciate that all the support we got through social media with them. But I kind of think in a lot of ways, Randy, I know I'm jumping the gun here, but I think the guy that could beat Roman Reigns was the guy that retained the Intercontinental title tonight, and that's Gunther, because he was impressive with the way he won, the move, the way he was able to do that, basically power bombing Sheamus on top of Drew McIntyre and pinning him and retaining it. And he's got right now kind of that maybe ability. I don't know if it's obviously two sort of bad guys here, but if I were to jump the gun tonight, the guy that I think could eventually beat Roman Reigns is Gunther.
I couldn't agree more. You look where Gunther started last year when he got his call up, won the IC title. So many unknowns. And I think there was a report at one point Vince wasn't happy with him and they were going to tell him to drop the IC title. Since he won it, you had the match at Cardiff that really defined Gunther. And then you look at the matches he had work with Ricochet, Shinsuke Nakamura, add
Braun
Braun
Strowman,
Strowman to this. Now you had an incredible match with Drew McIntyre
Madcap
and
Moss
Sheamus.
he was in the ring with.
Yep, and then let's not forget his Royal Rumble. Everything Gunther is doing, he is elevating not only himself, he's elevated the Intercontinental title back to where it was so prestige in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the maybe the early 2000s.
Yeah, I would say it's early 2000s. The title was still good. You had Jericho, you had Angle, Ed, Christian. It was still up until like the mid 2000s. Then it kind of veered off.
Exactly. It has changed so much where it has become so where he has now provided so much. So I definitely think down the line Gunther could be the guy being Roman. I don't know how that's going to work creatively, story wise, and in long term, but it is a possibility. Or even down the road, hey, maybe next year we may see Cody. Like I'm just throwing out there, maybe Cody and Gunther colliding over the titles. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. And Skulls has a follow up on his point about security, but Skulls, I'm going to say here, that's every sporting event. They didn't have all the exits open. Security was rude towards fans. Yeah, listen, I went to a lot, and Randy's been to a lot of events, so I was at a lot of Islander playoff games when I had tickets there. And the security there, I could tell you stories. That's just every place. These guys, you can't blame these guys and gals. They have 80,000 people to try to get out of a building in a certain amount of time. I can't fault them too much for some of those things here. But obviously, then we'll come back to the main event, but we'll talk about some of the other things. I guess briefly at the top, Brock Lesnar and Omos. I mean, pretty much as expected. I mean, I won't spend too much on it, but I mean, that was pretty much exactly what anybody thought that match was going to be.
There's nothing more you could have done with that match at that point. Like I think Brock, like I said, it's a lose-lose situation in this match. Omos wins, you kind of diminish Brock, you make him so big, but Omos hasn't proven. Brock winning, you don't really do anything for Omos. Like there was no winner, I think, in that match long
And I
term.
also think, I also think, and I guess if you buy into this stuff, and I know you sometimes refer to it, Chris Belcher has a couple different times when he does the recap shows with us. If Brock Lesnar actually did have creative control, at least in this match, do you think he's going to allow Omos to beat him?
Exactly where I think maybe Brock, I thought about this match thing. Hey, I want to do it, and it later on he realized, no, I'll just take the win, take a 1, 2, 3. I think that's all. I think that's all you could do with the match. There's no other way you could have went with it.
Yeah, no, there was to me. I didn't really think there was a plausible scenario where Almost was gonna win, even if you believe some of that stuff. So well, that's kind of I think pretty much where you expect it. I think maybe it was best it was opening match that way people kind of watch it, get it out of the way, and
Exactly.
fair enough there. And Skulls wants to point out Kurt Hawkins was there in the crowd. Okay, well, what's the reason or importance that Kurt Hawkins was there in the crowd? I mean, you got to give me a reason. I know he's a local guy like me, but I mean, other than that, what's the importance of that? So, all right, I'll let you get back to me, Skulls, on that. But let's then move over to the conversely the SmackDown women's tag match. A number of different tag teams we saw in there, and I guess I think it was a good match. I don't know if it was good as the Raw women's tag team matches that we saw last night, but I think it probably was for the best that Ronda and Shayna did get the win, especially if you're eventually going to figure out a way to take those tag team titles off Lita and Becky Lynch. And there is a history there we've spoke about, obviously, with Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch. And you've got this whole Trish Stratus element there that certainly eventually you would think plays out. So, I mean, give me your reactions on that match. I do think it was a good match. I did think the match was solid, but give me your reactions on it and just maybe the landscape from where we go from here with Ronda and Shayna coming out on top with the W.
Absolutely, a solid match. We saw a lot of good things from Raquel Rodriguez. Sonya Deville actually really impressed me. Same with Chelsea Green. Continue her character. Keith making a lot of great work. Nice to see Shotzi getting some opportunity there. Same with Talia. I just thought the ending, how Ronda kind of and Shayna just kind of snuck in and on her with
Yeah,
the armbar. That's the only thing I would question because I think you look at what Ronda Rousey has done. Like she's been so dominant in WWE and everyone she beat, and you kind of get her to kind of sneak in the back door to win it. I just didn't think it felt right, but it was a good match for what it did. It was, like I said, like you said, it wasn't nothing like the men's match where we see these crazy spots by Chad Gable, Ricochet, Otis, Braun Strowman. I think it was good to a.
I think the one spot I liked was it Raquel who had powerbombed Liv Morgan on top of everybody outside there. That was a pretty cool spot. That might have been the most memorable spot I remember, maybe.
Chelsea Green looking back, people looking, kind of flying towards the fan. That's the funny spot there. Like it didn't have like hype with the men's did, but it did the job, I would say.
All right, I think that's kind of pretty much where I go with that. Obviously, Chelsea Green, interesting character, sort of growing on people. It's sort of got that interesting thing there. But Ronda and Shayna, I think, kind of was the way to go there. I mean, in terms of just if you're going to take those tag titles eventually off Lita and Becky, which we definitely think that's going to happen at some point, that's probably the most believable of the teams. Although it would be nice to see Raquel and Liv Morgan get it. And also, interesting note there, which I thought was an interesting stat that was spoke about during the match, and I'm sure you caught it. Natalia has the most WrestleMania matches for any female, and that's interesting because up until for quite a long time, as you might have noted, Bret Hart had the most WrestleMania matches in history for a long time. Obviously, not now, but if you remember, going back from the beginning of WrestleMania 1, maybe even up to, I want to say, up to like WrestleMania 20, Bret Hart had the most WrestleMania matches of anybody in history. And now it's conversely another Hart. And you have to give Natalia credit for her longevity. Probably hasn't been like the greatest women's wrestler of all time, but she's got like all the stats. She's almost, I guess, Randy, you'll probably chuckle when I make this comparison. She's almost like in a way, like in terms of how Jaromir Jagr kept compiling stats toward the end of his career with the Panthers, the Rangers, the Devils, the Flyers, the Stars, where she's not the greatest of all time, but in terms of her career statistics, they're like right up there.
And you gotta remember this much with Natalia. She started at a time where women's wrestling took a back seat. The
Yeah, it was the
talent,
Divas, the tail end of the Divas run, if
yeah.
you remember. That
So,
whole the end of Trish and Mickey James. She came right in the end of that, if you remember.
exactly. So she really had a hard time to work up. She did what she was asked to do, try to put on match. She really helped mentor a lot of these younger, I think, generation. Becky Lynch, Bailey, especially Charlotte, the work she's done. And you know what? I would love to see Natalia get one day a WrestleMania singles match because a lot of her matches she's been kind of
Tag.
spotlight it in tag,
Yeah.
pre-show, all that kind of stuff, just for a kind of a thank you. Who knows? But she's done. You gotta. It's nice to see that her hard work and what she had to go through is kind of, at least there's a spot saying, hey, she's in the record book in the right way with a lot of the stuff she had to put up with. Let's say.
Well, you could also say conversely that she's one of those veteran hands that the company looks at and says, all right, we have Natalia. She's been in the company 14, 15 years, and she's kind of somebody that we trust to put in there with the younger talent to kind of elevate them a little bit to help them. And again, not to compare to obviously her uncle Brett, but in terms of Brett's longevity and the original beginnings of the WWF. I mean, Brett was the guy in terms of longevity, and Natalia has definitely done that there. But interesting note I did want to talk about before we go into the Intercontinental title match in the Hell in the Cell is, last night, Randy, we spoke about this possibility of a Bobby Lashley open challenge, and he comes out with the Andre the Giant Battle Royal with the trophy, and I was kind of like, was that a brain fart from WWE? Were we expecting something there? It was all the little bit of the rage of social media, and we never quite got it. I mean, was that kind of a brain fart there, or was I missing something here?
I think at the time it definitely, you're thinking, what the heck? You just comes up, you just had a match, you kind of want to see maybe him do something or interact with someone. Definitely, maybe could have been the one to beat up Miz instead of Shane McMahon blowing his ankle, nonetheless. But I think it, with how the other matches went, with Edge versus Finn Balor and Hell in a Cell, with the triple threat IC with Roman Reigns, these matches had a lot of time to tell great stories. So at time, yeah, I would definitely think, what the heck. But looking back at it now, I think it's the right call. You kind of give Lashley kind of a, hey, thanks for we're sorry, here come, all that kind of stuff. So
Okay, all right. I just thought that you were gonna get something from him. It's Bobby Lashley, and he does
mhm.
come out, which was okay. I mean, I wasn't really. I could have went either way with it, but it seemed like that you could have did something there. And Skulls wants to say Natty never impressed me, but why would you say Natty never impressed me? Even if you're not a Natty Neidhart fan,
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
you got to respect the longevity that she's had, because again, you're talking 14, 15 years of pretty much consistently being a part of things in the WWE landscape. And also, Skull says Shane was a shoot on Miz. Well, I'm going to get to Shane McMahon right now. Randy, this, I have to say, of all the interesting moments in WrestleMania, I think a lot of people probably could remember this one. And when we go like all time in like WrestleMania bloopers, or kind of one of those moments that you kind of almost like, I guess it's like in sports when somebody trips on a banana peel, or if somebody falls and just happens without nobody doing anything to them. It's going to be this moment here. I mean, certainly Shane McMahon comes out, and we see this Miz and Snoop Dogg thing, and then Shane gets emotional. Looks great, no question. Got the physique, and then he comes out there and he literally has a Vince McMahon Royal Rumble years ago like moment, and I mean, this is going to be one I think people are going to remember this just as much as Cody and Roman, but for the wrong reasons.
You're absolutely right. Shane McMahon had his WrestleMania moment, jumping off the cell against The Undertaker 32, his match with AJ Styles, and then tag team with Daniel Bryan. This, though, unfortunately, is going to erase all our thoughts. All we're going to remember now from Shane McMahon is blowing his ankle, jumping so high. So I think we could live without it. Like I said, maybe this would have been a better spot to get Bobby Lashley kind of in, for him to kind of attack the Miz and to get Snoop Dogg to win. In that sense, I don't know, but
It was
yeah.
just bizarre because all of a sudden, and you don't see this often, and I was thinking about you because I knew we were going to go in the air and talk about this, and they kind of had the camera and they didn't show Shane McMahon. They were trying to like basically go away from the accident, and you're like, uh-oh, this is bad, because you don't see that too often. And then they kind of had this, I guess, promptu thing with Snoop Dogg and The Miz, and Snoop Dogg doing an elbow. And I guess you have to give, in a way, Snoop Dogg some credit to, I guess, on his feet to be able to kind of think of a way to get out of that. And that's obviously a credit to, whether you're a fan of his music or not, a credit to him as an entertainer, because at least they were able to get out of that kind of alive, because that was pretty brutal still what happened with Shane McMahon nonetheless.
Oh, it could have been ugly. Like that could have really put the crowd in such a dysfunction, ugly mood. Like, and you gotta give Snoop Dogg for credit to just jumping on his feet, just quickly getting in there, hitting Miz a couple of times, doing the people or the Snoop elbow, I would call it. But it kind of saved. Like, it could have gone really bad, and how ugly it could have been, or they could have cut the commercial where. Yeah, just something we're gonna remember for Shane McMahon. Forget all the great moments. It's gonna be Shane McMahon blowing his ankle. And
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of said as I walked away, when I said this to my brother, I said, I have a feeling this might be the last time we see Shane McMahon
yeah,
at a WrestleMania, at least in that capacity. But like you said, though, Shane's definitely had some moments. I definitely always, and you had to always respect what he's put his body through at times. And we hadn't seen him in, I think, what, over a year? I think I want to
yeah,
say, right? Since the Royal Rumble last year, it's been over
yeah.
a year. So you kind of see him, and that was kind of a nice moment, but obviously that's going to be foreshadowed for a long time because of what happened. But I got some comments here. Skull says he's not a Natty fan because of her style. It needs improvement. Yeah, but Natty's a 15-year veteran, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with that comment. I don't think at this point she's going to improve anything. But Skulls had a funny one here. Snoop Dogg got tired of The Miz running his mouth. Well, you knew The Miz was probably going to get beat up of some sort. And I guess that's kind of at least kept the fans alive and happy. And I think you're absolutely spot on, Randy. But Craven Rage, who I can announce, I know we played a couple of different times with the date here on Sportswire, but next Sunday we're going to have Craven Rage back on with us to get us ready finally for Wrestling Championship Entertainment's Luck of the Draw. So while you're a little bit down, maybe if Roman has retained, you can go obviously follow our friends over at WCE on Facebook and YouTube and WCEheat.com for their next show. But he has an interesting point. Do you think it was a tease to get people talking about Bobby Lashley, about the Bobby Lashley challenge that didn't happen? Is that relevant to you at all, or just what do
Yeah,
you think?
I think it does. You have Raw tomorrow night, so we could see it get something happening with Bobby Lashley tomorrow night, saying a challenge. I didn't want to do it at Mania. Kind of plot the seed there. It's a good thought there. I definitely think it's a possibility.
All right, well, obviously, look, I would say probably the biggest Raw of the year usually is the one right after WrestleMania, because that's kind of where it set the tables for everything and everything to kind of going forward. So, I mean, certainly that's a fair point. Okay, so fair point. Maybe we'll come back to that. But let's talk about the Intercontinental Triple Threat match. And boy, I think, we said this maybe last night, and definitely on Friday's show. I think this was going to be the match of the night, and my opinion stands that I think that this was the match of the night. And I mean, what did Sheamus hit Drew? 29 times, 29 and a half times? I don't know if I've ever seen that before. And these guys, what they were putting themselves through, even toward the end of the match, it looked like that these guys could have still went another 5 or 10 minutes. And oh, by the way, throw out there Gunther, who's probably been the most impressive wrestler of anybody in the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 months. And I mean, this match might have been to me the best match of the night, and certainly a special match. I mean, again, kind of similar to Cody and Roman on how many different times you thought Sheamus had it, and then Drew, his best friend, and we thought it was his best friend. I guess kind of couple of different times denies that history, and Gunther finds a way, which I refer to on a really special finish. I think I'll remember that finish for a long time. But boy, that match lived up to it and some, Randy Dillon. And let's talk about that match as Gunther retains the Intercontinental title over Sheamus and Drew McIntyre.
That match had it all: hard hitting, excitement.
That would be a great UK match, by the way. Listen, we do a lot of UK
Yep.
coverage on Sportswire. That reminded me so much of a lot of the UK wrestlers that come on Sportswire with us.
Yeah, you always like with Sheamus. Like, we go back to Cardiff where Gunther really came out of his shell and match against
Yep.
Sheamus, and another classic. And his triple threat match can always be tricky because you're working with the third guy. How do you get them involved? And all three guys played the part. How hard hitting it was! Like, just look at all the chests by the end of it. Forget the 29 Battle of the Beast. Like, by the like, you could see how red Sheamus' chest was. Drew McIntyre, Gunther, these guys brought it all. They hit hard, the hard hitting action. It wasn't like some misses or some block. They actually went at full sight. The suspense it built up. You were on your seat all
Yeah,
night.
there was at least like what 6 or 7 almost. It was literally like 2 and like 9.9s almost. I mean, and the crowd was into that match. They were really into that match.
Oh, exactly. It definitely was in my eyes match of the night. I think it topped Roman and Cody by a little bit. It just
No,
how incredible.
I think it did, but for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So like how everything went together, and these are big guys. Some of the things they do. Drew McIntyre going over the top rope, Gunther flying, and then add Titus O'Neil on commentary. Just added more element. Like from last night to tonight, his commentary was just phenomenal.
You
So
know, I thought the
definitely,
same thing. I loved when he talked about the fact that he had been in the ring with both Drew and Sheamus, and he kind of added that element to that where, you had somebody that was actually could feel those hits, could be in that moment. And I thought that really added something to the match. It reminded me almost when, if you're a fan of boxing, and sometimes you get like a third person in the boxing booth for a championship match, and the boxer is that kind of commentator. And I think Titus kind of gave you that similar feel to it. I think that's why that added something to the match.
oh, 100%. It just all around were good. You could tell by the fans in there they were invested. By the end, it seemed like they're exhausted. Like, I don't know, how can you top that? So, it just bravo to all three men.
Oh, no question about it. And I think that obviously, no matter what happened there, I mean, what those guys put their bodies through, you
They're
got to
going to be
give
sore
them.
tomorrow. We know that.
I'm sure. Listen, that's why they're the SmackDown guys. So that's why they got a couple of days off. And that was definitely, I think, it wasn't the longest match because obviously the main event definitely took up a lot of time. But that was a solid 20 plus minutes. That match was. That was a rather long match. So that was definitely a match that we definitely called. And Craven Rage also wants to say that IC match was the best hard hitting match I've ever seen. That's an interesting point. And I guess in recent memory, it's got to be one of the better intercontinental title matches we've seen, at least in a pay per view. No.
I think at WrestleMania, this may have been the best IC match maybe since Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon at
Yeah.
WrestleMania 10, because you had a few years ago where Apollo Crews and Big E had a match for the IC title. There's a lot
Yes.
of hype to that. Wasn't great. I can't recall
I was thinking WrestleMania 16. You had, I guess it was Kurt Angle had the European title and the Intercontinental title, and he wrestled again. I know I'm saying his name, but Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho. I thought that might have been the other match that I would have said from a triple threat standpoint but it wasn't quite fully for the IC title, but it kind of had basically both of Angle's titles. I thought that was a very good match, but it's been a long time. The point is, in terms of a IC title match with that type of,
And the importance of the IC title, usually the IC title I can remember for WrestleMania has kind of been someone had it in some different match, whether a Money in the Bank, a tag team.
Yeah.
This was the first time the IC title actually felt like it meant something at a WrestleMania.
Yes, because I think also for a couple of reasons. Gunther's performance at the Royal Rumble was impressive. What his last 7 or 8 months, we rattled off the opponents: Ricochet, Braun Strowman, Madcap Moss, Drew McIntyre, Sheamus. I mean, what he's done with that, and I think also because of the caliber of people he had there going for that title, Sheamus and Drew, and these guys have been at the top of the mountain. I think that added something to it. That's why the IC title in a way is kind of back almost in a sense.
Oh, 100%.
All right, well, we are here on Sportswire Radio. We are going over WrestleMania 39 Night 2. Obviously, I know for a lot of people it's not going to be as good as Night 1, but we still think there was a lot of good to talk about. We'll also talk about some of the bad, which we already have with, obviously, Randy Dillon. Randy does a great job for us covering all things related to the world of professional wrestling. He also does some hockey, obviously, as the host of the Hockey Fan Chat, which you hear on sportnarium.com/player. You can also follow Randy on Instagram and Twitter at Randy Dillon. That is DHILLON. And obviously, you hear Randy with us Friday nights, 9:30 p.m. on Sportswire Radio for our weekly recap show. We talk wrestling, we talk the NHL, although Islanders right now are a little bit of trouble, it looks like, but We do talk about all things related to the NHL as well with Randy. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I am the man behind Sportswire Radio. And again, if you like what you hear from us, continue to give us a like and follow on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. Almost 600 followers. So getting one step closer to that big milestone. Also, YouTube got some new followers of late. I see people watch us on YouTube. So thank you very much for that. And of course, also on Twitter as well. But Randy Craven Rage gives us a question, which I know I brought up a few minutes ago. Now, do we see Gunther get pushed up to the chase of the world title now? Well, I mean, he's got the IC title at the moment, so I would say short term, no, but
long term, yes. I think eventually when he dropped the IC title, but the question now is, how does he drop the IC title and to who? This kind of made a little bit more sense where you have a triple threat match. He doesn't have to be part of the pin, but now with like if when he does drop the IC title, how are they going to be? Is it going to be maybe in a faction of a ladder match where again he doesn't have to be pinned? He can kind of sneakily transition him to a world championship? Are we going to see more triple threat fatal four-way classics for the IC title? Because I don't see anyone really on the SmackDown roster challenging Gunther.
I was going to say the same thing. You know, the SmackDown roster is so narrow in terms of that pool. I mean, do you run it back with Drew and Sheamus again, or one of them? I mean, I don't know where you go from here with that.
No, exactly. And we forgot to add one name to the list for Gunther that crossed my mind till now. We had Hall of Famer Rey Mysterio, who put on a classic with him as well. So he's had beaten some big names already to successfully defend that IC title.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I don't think LA Knight's the guy. I mean, a guy I guess would have made sense at some point down the road, but they've really kind of muffled things with him would be a Karrion Kross, but Karrion Kross has just been kind of in the no man's land right now. I mean, I don't really know unless you go back and maybe run it back one more time with the Drew and Sheamus, but I feel like it's been beaten with a dead horse. So I think Gunther's going to keep the title for a while. I do not think he's going to lose the title. I just do not think so. And Craven Rage says Bobby Lashley, but Bobby Lashley's on Raw. Now, we have a draft coming up. I mean,
there's rumors that it's going to happen here soon. So,
well, I mean,
and that might be, maybe that I'll get that actually with Roman when we talk about Roman and Cody again.
Okay, yeah, well, we can do that in a second. Certainly, Bobby Lashley. I'll hold my fire on that until we get to actually the rather main event. We'll come back to that. But let's talk then about the Hell in the Cell. Edge and Finn Balor. It was the Brood Edge, which we got to see, and the Demon Finn Balor. And we really got to see actually some Brood, literally, in terms of some blood out there from Finn Balor. I don't think that was necessarily planned with the ladder shot. And it was kind of, I mean, it was definitely a hard-hitting match, but I don't know if it was hard-hitting to what people had wanted. I mean, certainly the concerto made me squirm a little bit, I will say. But I guess it was a good match. I definitely think there was a lot of good moments here in the match. I mean, Edge is in phenomenal shape as always, but I don't know if this was the way. I'm with you on this. I don't know if this is the way I would have won here, but give me your reactions toward the Hell in the Cell match here. Edge, I guess, kind of gets the upper hand here based off you following it going into the match. They talk about Edge created the Judgment Day. The Judgment Day basically kind of shot him in the head, and now this is his way to get back at them. Although I kind of felt he already did that a few different times over the past few months, but give me your reactions here to this match as the Brood Edges, you might want to call it, got a win over the Demon, Finn Balor.
Definitely another good match. I think it was played right because I think we got to remember with Edge, his neck. You don't want it to be so hard hitting where his neck causing a problem, then he has to step away fully. With Edge, you really have to be careful on what you can kind of do with him and with how hard hitting it is. I thought the story told great. We thought some great work for the Demon. A friend of mine tweeted saying the Demon should have won. You make the character look.
I kind of think actually he should have got the win also, believe it or not. I don't think Edge needed the win here. I do not think he needed the win.
Exactly. I did think that at first, but then it goes to my point yesterday. Rhea Ripley winning the SmackDown Women's Championship. Dominic Mysterio lost to Rey. Now Finn lost to Ed. Did this give Rhea the opportunity to kind of push herself away from Judgment Day? Because now she has to go to SmackDown to keep the SmackDown Women's Championship unless Judgment Day somehow magically shows up on SmackDown. So it kind of plot that seed. What next for Judgment Day now? The two of the three two all the three compared to that wrestled, only one of them got the big win.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Do you think then is it where if you heard some of what Rhea had to say post reactions last night, it's kind of this new era, I think was the word she had used at some point in the press conference. If you buy into that stuff, do you then use this as the moment where Rhea kind of goes on her own and ignores the Judgment Day, or tomorrow night on Raw, do they acknowledge this scenario? Where do you go with this?
I think you have to kind of push it at this point because I think Rhea on both brands doesn't make sense, especially as the women's championship. If she was the Raw Women's Champion, I think it makes a little bit more sense for her. You can keep the Judgment Day together, but because now she's on SmackDown, it's gonna be a little. There's gonna be it's gonna be choppy where she might not be there every week with the Judgment Day and all the work she's done with them, and then it's gonna be a back and forth. So I think if you're going to pull the trigger on Rhea slipping away, going on her own away from Judgment Day, now is the chance. You might not get this opportunity down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Rhea is on a little bit of another level. Now, Dominic, I guess you could still, because of the whole thing with Ray, I think we kind of were in agreement last night that that's going to continue. I don't know what happens here with Finn Balor. Edge, I mean, I don't think we're going to see Edge every week on Raw. I kind of felt after the match that this maybe we don't see Edge. Maybe we see him tomorrow night, but don't see him for a little while. I mean, Edge is certainly not going to be somebody that's going to wrestle every week for obvious reasons. Certainly being retired for nearly 10 years is one of those reasons why. And like you said, you don't know what you want to do. And also, Edge is a guy that's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer and he's an attraction. You don't really want to put him out there that often. So I guess that's something that maybe Friday's show on Sportswire, maybe we'll have some answers for. I'll definitely ask your thoughts on it. But before we get to the main event, I have to ask you, because, this was the match, Randy, that I think myself, you, and Chris Belcher, when he joined us, that we really didn't know who was going to win this match. But I guess in a way, maybe we should have gave Bianca Belair more credit, because certainly WWE, as you kind of touched upon here a little while ago, they certainly still believe in Bianca Belair. And I don't know if she's going to have a run as long as Roman reigns, but she's definitely a big-time box office star. And there was very much some impressive moves in the match from her. And there was some moments that she was tested, but she retains and shows why she is the EST. And give me your thoughts on Bianca Belair versus Asuka. And I'm sure a lot of Twitter is going to certainly be disappointed on this one also, but maybe this one made sense here as Bianca retains to continue her year-plus run as champion.
So I was actually watching this match with my uncle. My uncle was saying,
Oh, what'd your uncle say?
He's doing good. He was saying this wasn't a good match. When I was watching it, I thought it was a great chess match. One counter after another.
Okay, but tell me why he didn't think it was a good match. Tell me why.
One, he thought because what Charlotte and Rhea did last night.
Because he saw that, and that was basically, that was Mount Rushmore, and that was basically the top of the mountain, and nothing was going to be as good as that.
100%. Okay. But for me, watching that match, I really enjoyed it because it was a chess match. It was really one counter after another. Who was really trying to get the upper hand on top of one another? We saw Asuka trying to use the miss at times. Yep.
Bianca kind of blocked it, kind of like went away from it. Yeah, good point.
It was really a good back and forth match, and I really wanted Asuka personally to get the win because my question is, who challenged Bianca Belair next? I'm trying to think on the Raw roster. Who's really the next big challenger? Is it going to be an Io Shirai who's goes away for Damico because you already used Bayley and Becky Lynch? You kind of use that and beat it to a pulp. There's not really any top heel female wrestlers on the Raw roster I look at that you can kind of say, okay, they deserve a shot for Bianca Belair. So this is where now I'm struggling with.
I have a short-term thought on that before I get to a Craven Rage comment. It's going to sound crazy, and tell me what your thoughts are on this. And I don't know if it's possible, but for the short term, right? And maybe this is where it leads to the eventual, if you believe in what the internet says about a Trish Stratus turn. Although I kind of feel like with Trish Stratus, it's one of those people that the fans are gonna never really want to boo. But would Trish Stratus be somebody for a one-off to challenge? Be maybe that kind of person to elevate Bianca even further, and maybe that's where Trish kind of says, I thought I could win and put my stuff up to par, and I didn't, and kind of leads you to go into a different direction. Would that maybe be somebody that could
No,
do that?
maybe down the road, but not right away.
But
Because
she ain't gonna be here long. Trish Stratus again is almost 50 years old. She's also, as you know, a Canadian judge on
yeah,
Canada's Got Talent. So you're not gonna get Trish Stratus very long
mhm,
if you're gonna have her here. I mean, you got to use it for something, right?
yeah.
She's not going to be an accomplice to a tag team. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as a thought.
It could work, but I just don't think it's gonna, because I'm trying to think for the next event, Backlash, who can really challenge her. Trish Stratus did. She came out to Los Angeles. Like I said, Canada's top
Canada's
talent
Got
will be
Talent.
starting here soon. So it just doesn't make sense for Trish to be coming back and forth and then going all the way to Mexico and Puerto Rico next month. It just doesn't make sense. And maybe you could make the argument Chelsea Green, but I think give her some more time to develop
Yeah, I
the
don't think Chelsea
character.
Green is viable.
So
I don't
you're
think.
kind of right now in a little bit stump unless the plan is for Oscar to get the win down the road. So
Well, I mean that if you're gonna run it back, which wouldn't be outlandish, if you run it back with Asuka at Backlash, and then maybe Bianca hangs on here for another month, and then you make the change. Yeah, I don't think people would be. I don't think I'd have a problem with Asuka getting another crack at it at Backlash. I wouldn't have a problem with
I
that. I mean,
think that's your I think that's the only move you have at this point if you're WWE creative, because like even with an NXT call up, like okay maybe,
well, Roxanne Perez lost the title at Stand
but
and
I'm not
Deliver.
saying Roxanne. I'm trying to think who was the other her partner was before. Can't remember the name because not going to be anyone from Toxic Attraction. Um,
No, no.
I'm just trying to think who were the
And India
Cora
Hartwell
Jade.
has.
I don't. The only other one I could think is maybe Cora Jade, but I don't think
Cora
she was.
Jade's injured, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So again, like you don't really have any options at this point to kind of give Bianca a challenge that I actually really think could beat it unless you go back to Asuka.
Yeah, I think Asuka, based off how that competitiveness of that match, I'd be okay with them running that back. I wouldn't be mad if she got the title at Backlash, although my gut says is that Bianca's going to hang on for a little while longer, at least maybe several months longer. I don't know if it's going to be Roman territory, but I think clearly WWE sees something in Bianca that she's basically their, I guess, female version of Roman Reigns at the moment. And listen, she's very marketable. I mean, she's got the look, she speaks well, she's got the athleticism, she's got the strength. I mean, she's definitely a total package. A couple of thoughts here from Craven Rage. I agree they definitely needed to pull the trigger to have Ray go on her own, Rhea Ripley on her own. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a strong possibility. Craven says, my thoughts was it was a chess match, but Asuka should have won. But honestly, I don't see anyone on the Raw roster to give her a challenge, meaning Bianca Belair. But that's exactly why my point is that maybe you give it one more for Asuka at Backlash.
Yeah. That's the only way I think you can go at this point.
Well, I'm gonna get to my other guest next Sunday because we have a matinee on Sportswire because obviously my schedule is opening up later this week, thankfully, so we can go back to full-time wrestling coverage. And one of those people, Sunday night UK time, is coming on from Firestar Pro Wrestling. There's Mr. BMD, and it segues right into what we're going to talk about once again here, Randy. And evening, boys, not going to lie, I'm feeling salty about tonight's main event. Randy, last night, conversely, people felt good about the main event. People went home, they were happy, they felt great. But tonight, people, you could feel it. They were let down tonight, and that's obviously talking about Roman Reigns retaining his run here as the Universal Champion going into which we think is going to be historic territory, and Cody Rhodes, and obviously we'll segue back into it here. And I mean, there's going to be a lot of fans that are definitely, I'm sure, in that building and watching this that were expecting a title change, and they didn't get it.
You're absolutely right. We're gonna hear some loud boos from Roman. I think not as loud as Montreal, maybe as loud as Montreal. I don't know if that's gonna be.
Well, that was a special. That was a special thing. That was Sammy's hometown. We spoke
Yeah.
about that. That was special.
I don't think we're going to get there, but I think the other thing to add to the bloodline is there's now a little bit more story where they're no longer on. Not all of them are on top. You got Roman Reigns on top. The Usos disappoint Roman. Where that going to kind of go? The only thing that worries me, and Tom, you brought up this point because we know Roman's going to take time off. What's going to happen now with Rome? What's going to happen now? Are we going to kind of see Brock Lesnar? The one point I'm going to kind of point toward the draft, if there is a draft coming up, is there one point of the title to be ununified for Roman, where he keeps one title on SmackDown, the other title, maybe Cody can finish the story that way. That's the only option I think you might be able
Yeah,
to
I
do.
mean, we've talked about this kind of like a boxer bobbing his head, but I think to me, it's either Roman or nothing. I mean, to kind of have a draft, split the title, and then Cody gets it that way. It's almost like, remember when Brock Lesnar had the title for a little while there, and he took it off, if I'm not mistaken, Bobby Lashley, and then Roman took the title from him, and I mean, yeah, I
It's not.
guess.
It's definitely not an ideal scenario. Just it's a possibility. Could it work? Maybe. If you still want Roman to reach a 1,000, but I, from what I heard, he's going to be gone for a while at this point. So I think that
Well,
just
he ain't gone tomorrow. He's still
yeah,
the champion. I mean,
yeah.
he's still here.
Mhm. So I guess we'll see down the line because I know last year we saw him for about a month and then he kind of disappeared for a few months and then he came back to summer and then he's been come and go. Then thankfully Sami Zayn was able to save the Bloodline story, but I don't know if you're going to get that lucky this time around.
All right, I got a couple of comments here from Craven Rage. Let's go to him here first. We'll come back to the main event. If Rhea didn't go after Charlotte, I would have had Rhea. I clarify the comment. I apologize, but I'm not quite sure. Well, I think they'll have Roman make history, then Cody run it back at Backlash. But Backlash today is April 2nd. You'd have to go past Backlash, though.
Yeah,
No.
you have to go past Backlash because I think I did the math. It's May. It's late in May where he passes day 1,000.
See, my opinion is if Roman's going to lose the title, it is going to be an unpopular point for people. People are not going to like to hear this, and my personal feeling still is Roman's going to be champion at least for another year. But that's my opinion. I think realistically, if you were going to make the change, it's not until SummerSlam because SummerSlam to me has become, I think, WWE's second biggest event. I think that's the second biggest event. They do a good job with that. It's outside. It's usually, to me, SummerSlam's become a lot bigger than it used to be. Unpopular opinion, Randy, but is that the time to do it? What do you think about that?
I think you can pull it off for SummerSlam. They're going to do it in Detroit. You're going to get. I think they can fill that stadium because one, you're close enough to the Canadian border where you can get fans to come down. So that definitely helps you there. And then summer people come out, make the plan. So that's an option there if they want to split the. They want to get Roman to drop it there because he's already past Pedro Morales' record at that point. He's close to to making it year number 3, but at that point there he has a long way to pass the next person, which I think is one of Hogan's range, which is 1,200, but that's another 200 days, so that's quite a while. So SummerSlam might be the best spot.
So yeah, we've got Bruno Sammartino, which we're in agreement.
Never.
He's never touching that.
Yeah.
Backlund, probably not. Backlund was champion 5+ years. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I don't.
We're
even
not
though
getting there.
Hogan was 4. We've got another like 9 months for that. He might. I mean, I could see somebody wanting to take that off Hulk. Maybe Hulk. He might pass Hulk. If that's 200 days is what, like 9 months, 8 9 months.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
something.
mean
Yeah.
that's close. I think Hulk is going to be interesting. Let's see what Craven Rage has to say. Since he's leaving, and it's rumored that they created the winged belt with the Cody. But all these people, come on, Randy, and they talk about they heard this, they read that, but like, what do I always say? This is why I don't read the internet nerd. That's also because we talk to a lot of wrestlers on Sportswire. But if you would follow what everybody says on Sportswire, Cody would have won in a landslide, and yet Roman's still the champion. So have they really
Somebody would have
created a
been sold
wing
to
belt?
Saudi back in January for all we know. So
But it's fascinating because Okay, so you spoke about the fact that Roman wins, but the Usos disappointed Roman because Sammy and KO got the belts. Okay, so the fans are sort of half happy
Yeah.
because obviously Sammy and KO, their friendship's back. They got the titles. People feel good about that. But now you've got Roman with this championship, and Solo kind of comes in and saves the bloodline. But where do we go though with Cody Rhodes? Because I know we spoke about this at the very beginning, but I don't think even if he wins a title, it's never going to be as good as the moment that he would have had tonight. So, I mean, can he realistically still be a champion? I mean, to me, my gut says right now, I mean, he's going to have a setback for a while.
Yeah, but he's gonna have a setback. This is gonna bring up the adversity because we got to be honest with Cody's return here. He came back. What I said at the start of the show, he came back. He beat Seth Rollins a couple of times, had some matches on Raw. Then he tore his pec. He's gone for
Yep.
9 months. Win the Rumble. Win the Rumble, entering number 30. He had some matches here and there. He gets a big win under Solo on Monday, and then he loses tonight. The really for Cody that pec injury really, I think, kind of derailed Cody to build up where the kind of the flows the up and down where we saw with Daniel Bryan back, which I'm giving compared to where he got that big win at WrestleMania, the ups and downs where he won the title, but then Triple H took it away. The referee, the authority always trying to get over him, screwing him, getting over the upper hand. Where there was always that Daniel Bryan, that flow where he's so close but somehow gets snitched. Cody kind of had this kind of perfect. He had a little bit of an easy road where everything's going so well. Now he ran into this adversity. Are we going to see now a little bit where Cody's struggling to get that big win, and then finally he gets it? Where I think it might give that big reaction where after kind of the setbacks, he finally climbed the top and get it.
But I also feel like though the way they built this up and they talked about the promos, they talked about the father never winning this title, they talked about the Rhodes legacy, they talked about Cody's setbacks and the different characters and what he went through, and even in a twisted way referring to places that he worked at after he left WWE, and then he loses. So they still kind of refer to all that, but he didn't get the job done. Everything he talked about, everything he did, he didn't win tonight.
No, exactly. I think you have to refer to that because how Cody returned as well, and everyone knows how he left W, how he left, went a big name over himself, went to AEW, really helped run it, create AEW, and get it to a
Oh, listen, what he
successful
did, and
point.
listen, even if you're a wrestling fan, what he did with the Young Bucks and creating AEW with Kenny Omega, and then also even the Super Show, Ring of Honor, selling out Madison Square Garden. I mean, Ring of Honor, which obviously is a massive company, no question, but they were pretty much a regional brand with a very, very passionate fan base, but not a massive million fan base, but were able to sell out Madison Square Garden. So his legacy, no question, outside of WWE, is definitely cemented. But to me, his legacy in WWE was kind of riding on him winning. And I hate to bring this up for our UK fans and the wrestlers that come on. It reminds me of a wrestler we have on Bentley. And this guy, Bentley, has won these big matches. He gets in there, and then he comes up in the match and he comes up short and he becomes the almost guy. And I think the concern here with Cody, does Cody now become one of those almost guys? When the almost guys don't win it, very hard for them to basically build off that or recover from that.
Yeah, it does happen. You look at, I'm thinking, I'm trying to think of someone who was an almost guy. Like Kofi Kingston, you can maybe put that record, but he never got the
I think Christian was an almost guy
Yeah.
for a very long time. You look at his couple of title wins; they were kind of very short. You know, Kane was an almost guy. Was a guy that was a big time utility main eventer, and he got the title,
Mick
but
Foley.
Foley to me was like the original Daniel Bryan. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of guys that may have got the title, but when they got the title run was kind of meh. They had it, but Christian comes to mind. Christian had a couple of dances with the title, but not an impressive run as champion. Kane had multiple runs, not impressive ones. I think in wrestling history, the most notable one is Lex Luger. I mean, Lex Luger in wrestling history is the most notable almost guy. I mean, the guy could never win a big match if his life depended on it, and he had literally a 1 week run with the WCW title, and that was it. Not really counting the NWA title that he got basically after Ric Flair basically quit the NWA at the time to come to the WWF. But that's the danger here with Cody. This was the moment. You had fans, Anthony Finkel, right? Not like us. He's a wrestling fan. He watches us, but he doesn't understand the nooks and crannies. And there's a lot of people that are out there like this. Even Skulls is a pro wrestler. He wanted Roman to go down, to be throned, and this was Cody's moment, and that's the point. That's all.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get what you're saying there, Tom. I think for someone like Cody, I don't think it's gonna go that way personally. I think
Okay.
everything he's done with how it's still that story where someone with Christian where the one thing with Christian was where in WWE he was the almost guy, but he did get himself over another company.
No, he did. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly, listen, he's had title runs. Obviously, did a lot of great work here in AEW of note. Obviously, his run in TNA kind of gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. But in terms of like his run in WWE, yes, he had I think two short title runs, but he was never quite the guy. Not Edge. I mean, Edge was referenced as an 11-time world champion. I mean, Edge is certainly an all-time legend. I mean, you think about that, but there were certain wrestlers, and I think Kane to me comes to also as a guy that comes. Even though Kane had a couple of title runs, but still not really to you put him at that all time Mount Rushmore level. But Craven Rage has an interesting one, which I don't know if I see this as a fetched kind of point, but I'll ask your thoughts. Is Randy Orton coming back to dethrone Roman? I mean, he's got the history about the title runs. I mean, there is that point. What do you think there?
I see Randy Orton coming back and challenging Roman, but I don't see him one dethroning Roman.
Me either.
I
Me
still
either.
think if you're gonna have someone dethrone Roman, it's either gonna be Cody or Gunther.
I think Gunther is the guy. I think he's straight out of Central Casting. He's got the look. He's what he's been able to do in the ring. He's the one guy that actually he towers over Roman. He's got the strength, and I think he matches him, and he might even exceed him. And I think that's where there's adversity. You have the two groups, Imperium, the Bloodline. To me, that's the guy that's straight out of Central Casting. And if you're going to go to the European market, which it seems like WWE is finally recognizing, or we recognized on Sportswire for a long time, that's the guy that I think is to do it. That's the guy.
And then the other point was Cody. I think what kind of you can kind of keep him in with that bloodline feud is where he was saying with Solo, "You're not ready, you're not there." I think you can get him to work a little bit with Solo to keep kind of work with the bloodline, and then if he's able to put down Solo, and the Usos are kind of take care of, then he can say, "I want one more shot."
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he could hang around the peripheral of the title picture, but I think after tonight, I don't think that he's the guy. I think this was the moment, and they didn't do it here. And Anthony Finkel is sending me reels on Instagram. Do you not realize that I'm actually live? Some people do that. They'll send you like stuff where you're actually on live. But like I can't view this right now, so I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions before closing thoughts. Obviously, we're here recapping WrestleMania 39 Night 2, and obviously, certainly a good WrestleMania 39 Night 2, not as good as the first one. So I'm going to ask you first, where do you think we go from here coming up Raw technically tonight? What do you think are some of the big storylines to look for here going with Raw first?
The big storyline that I'm looking for Raw is tomorrow night. What's gonna happen to Rhea Ripley and Judgment Day? Because remember, only one out of three got the big wins. What is next for the Bloodline? Because only half of them are. One of them's coming back with the gold. What's next with Cody? And what big surprises are we going to see tomorrow night on Raw? Are we going to see any special debuts? Any big call up Braun Breaker
Braun
dropping the
Breaker's the
title.
guy I would love to see. Braun Breaker, definitely.
Roxanne Predev, where she lost the NXT title, but I still think she's gonna be hanging around with NXT because I think the situation was they didn't know she would be ready in time, and I think they decided they had other plans. So I think she might still be around in NXT for a bit. And then there's the rumors of Jay White and Randy Orton. Are they going to be showing up tomorrow night on Raw?
Jay White, I feel like I've been hearing about Jay White and WWE through these different comments for months. With Jay White, I'll believe it when I see it. Randy Orton, though, I think is a name that a lot of fans would love to see Randy Orton back because Randy Orton obviously has been out of action now. I think about 10 months, right? It's been about 9 or 10 months we've been out with Randy Orton, and I think that's a name that a lot of people would love to see, obviously love to see if he has something in the tank. So we'll see about that. So I got to ask you then another question in terms of where we rank, because I've seen this on social media, comments from people here. I read Facebook. I've got like 1,400 friends on Facebook, and many of them, Randy, are wrestlers. So I would have to say like 30% of my friends are professional wrestlers at this point on Facebook, which sounds impressive, but I'll leave that for another point. But I mean, where do you rank this WrestleMania in all-time history?
I don't know if you can still rank it as the greatest WrestleMania of all time.
Well, the Shane screw up is definitely going to take it down.
Yeah, the Shane screw up definitely derailed that, but I definitely think it is up there as one of the top maybe 5, maybe you can put in the top 3 WrestleManias of all time because this was still a very, very good WrestleMania. Night 1 was incredible. You couldn't find anything wrong with it. Night 2,
there was nothing wrong with night 1. No.
Night 2, you have your flaws, but you look back at maybe the past WrestleManias in the last maybe 15 years, or maybe even go back to in the WrestleManias 20 years minus maybe WrestleMania 17 and 19. This was still a very good WrestleMania compared to some of those shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, look, WrestleMania 18 was legendary because just obviously you had Rock and Hogan, you had Jericho and Triple H. I mean, you had a number of different, just really, really great matches. I mean, but in terms of 20 years, yeah, it's definitely up there. And Craven Rage says, I rank it a 3 rating. Well, do you mean 3 in top 3 in modern history or just 3 out of 5 stars? Because 3 out of 5, I mean, you're a wrestler. I would think a little higher from you. Unless I'm missing something.
For stars rating, I give this WrestleMania 4 out of 5 stars. 4 to 5, 4 to 4.25 stars.
It's funny you stole the words out of my mouth because I would have said 4.25. I mean, not to go and do the Meltzer thing, but I would say 4.25. I think is pretty fair. I think pretty much my only drawbacks were obviously the Shane thing, because obviously the whole thing with that. I think other than that, I don't think I really had. I mean, Brocken almost was what it was. Women's tag match was what it was still actually decent. But other than that, I don't think, maybe Ms. McAfee was gimmicky, but I would say 4.25. But I didn't really have any issues. And the funny thing was, you didn't need Austin tonight. You didn't need The Rock tonight. You didn't need Hogan to be there. You didn't need the old names. You didn't need any of that because you had, these great matches. You had Ray and Dom. We didn't really talk about that too much tonight, but obviously last night you had obviously the Intercontinental title match tonight, which I think was actually the match of the night. You could even argue maybe it was the match of the show. And you think about obviously the tag title match was very good. Although people were was funny. Conversely, people were disappointed with that last night. I mean, listen, you had Charlotte and Rhea. Listen, I think to me my top 2 matches probably were Charlotte, Rhea, and the Intercontinental title match. Those are probably my 2 favorite matches. My 2 and third, I'd have to go, I guess, Cody and Roman, just because it was Cody and Roman. But I would even argue that the men's tag match should get an honorable mention.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think you can't go wrong with, if you would name for me, the top 5 matches, like, I would have, like, definitely Charlotte, Rhea, the triple threat, Cody, Roman, the tag team title match, the final match. If I would have
Ray and Dom,
yeah, I would have to give the final match to. It beat the Hell in a Cell just a bit because I thought that how the match played out, how Ray finally got his hand on Dom, give him the beating with the belt, how Judgment Day the Latino World Order, Bad Bunny, how they all played a part
Yeah,
in
it
it.
was emotions. Yeah,
Yeah.
that what they did a great job before we get to closing notes. They did a great job with emotions.
Mhm.
They played that perfectly in terms of that. So I think I'm in agreement with you. I think for the most part that would have been my top five. No order. Again, Charlotte Rhea, Intercontinental title match, Ray and Dom, men's title match, and Cody and Roman. Those would
Yeah.
be, I think, to me, the five. I think again, no order. And also, Craven says he gives it a 4.5. Okay, so we stand correct. That makes sense. I was going to say 4.5 out of 5. I definitely could say that. He also says the IC match saved night two. No, I don't think night two was bad, even if you took away the IC match. I think Bianca and Asuka was good.
Mhm.
I think it was obviously not Charlotte and Rhea, but Charlotte and Rhea had the history.
Yeah.
They had the emotions. They were on a crash
Mhm.
collision course. Bianca and Asuka didn't do that, but that's not fair to them. I think the match itself and some of the spots they did,
Mhm.
I think was very well. I think Hell in the Cell was still good. I think
Yeah.
Edge and Finn certainly played very well. So I think Cody and Roman was still a great match. The psychology with that, I think, just obviously even the spots they did outside the match, and even referring to the fact they were beating the count and
Yeah.
going in and out, and the amount of false finishes. So I think that night two, even with the IC match being on the stratosphere, it still was a good night. But again, not night one, but we're all in agreement with that. But those are some of the things we thought tonight. If you missed anything, definitely let us know. We'll be back Friday night, 9:30 p.m. And we'll certainly talk, I'm sure, a lot about what happens on Raw coming up, maybe even NXT and some other things in wrestling. And Randy's the guy to do that. Also, and Craven also wants to say that he agrees with you on the matches, so that's always good. And of course, want to make sure we give our friends at Wrestling Championship Entertainment a follow at WCE Heat on Facebook, YouTube, also WCEHeat.com. And Craven will be in your chair, Randy, a little bit earlier in next Sunday, so we'll be different. We'll have wrestling talk at a different level, so we'll see how that plays out. But love having you, Randy. You've become one of my favorites, and definitely looking forward to Friday night, and definitely maybe going to a big wrestling show soon, very soon. We'll definitely talk about that. But in the meantime, want to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, say, and floor is yours, my friend.
Because I want to end the Tom on the note. I know a lot of people are sour about night two, but the point is, night one was so. I think the night one was too good for night two to really topple the expectation night one set. I think maybe put night two in a position where it was really hard to top. But overall, this was probably one of the best manias we've seen in a very, very long time, with a lot of good matches. There's always a question of questionable bookings, but I think in the long, you look at it a whole, a very good show. There was no, I think, very few bad matches in maybe one bad match maybe in total, which is Shane blowing his ankle. But other than that, I think everything was really done to a spectacle where it was a great show. The fans got their money worth. We saw great wrestling for 2 nights. What more could we ask for?
No, I think that's the thing ultimately. And listen, everyone's gonna Monday morning quarterback. Everybody's gonna look at it and say, well, what could we have done differently? But again, to me, the way I look at it, after what we saw from night one, it's almost like a movie. It's almost like a sequel to a movie where it reminds me of, I don't know if you're a big Star Wars fan, but every Star Wars movie would be get compared to the first one and the second one. And then it's like, okay, well, it's like, well, sometimes you have certain movies or certain parts, or it's the Batman series would be an example. Not every Batman would be the first one, or the first one with Christian Bale. I mean, so unfortunately, listen, and different things happen, but I think by and large, night two was still good. I think, and as Anthony Finkel and I were saying this before I came on the air, that was electric.
Oh,
That was really,
100%.
listen, I have to say, in terms of main events, leave aside the outcome before we get out of here. I mean, that was really one of the most electric main events I've seen since what? Maybe Rock Cena? I mean, just in terms of the overall electricity. You could feel it was almost something different. That electricity was on par of one of the
Yeah.
biggest main events. So at the end of the day, listen, it was still a lot of good. I'm excited about all of it. Craven's last comment, it was a good show put together, and I'm looking forward to being with you Friday night to talk more about the landscape of Raw, and we'll see about SmackDown. And my friend, Thank you as always. Everybody can follow you on Twitter and Instagram at Randy Dillon. And also, we definitely acknowledge you and the Bloodline, acknowledge you for all the great stuff you do for us here. And we'll definitely talk Friday night, my friend. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good, Tom. Have a great night. Always a pleasure.
All right, and ladies and gentlemen, that was our WrestleMania 39 Night 2 reactions. We'll be back with more wrestling coverage coming up here again. That'll be Friday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I believe I'll be back actually Wednesday afternoon. I think I have a spot with, for you, Craven Rage, Mr. C2K, Courage to Kill. I think we have a spot coming up Wednesday at some point, so I'm looking forward to that. So stay tuned for an announcement for that, and also be back with a matinee of shows as we resume wrestling coverage next Sunday with our friends in the UK over Firestar Pro Wrestling and also at WCE Wrestling Championship Entertainment. So my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I'm the man behind Sportswire Radio. Alongside me is our tribal chief, our head of the Sportswire Radio wrestling table. That is Randy Dillon. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming. And thank you, everybody. Good night. Stay well, stay safe, and here on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio.